25th, 2024 City Council meeting. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Counselor Ash. Present. Counselor Campbell. Present. Counselor Devine. Present. Counselor DeBona.
Present.
Counselor Harris.
Present.
Counselor Liang. Present. Counselor McCarthy.
Present.
Counselor Minton.
Present.
President Kane.
Present.
9 members, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Please stand for a moment of silence. Just use this moment as you will. Turn to the flag.
Pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you please read the open meeting law?
Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived by those present, and are deemed acknowledged and permissible.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, first item on the agenda.
Update Public Safety Headquarters construction.
Okay. Great. I guess Joe Shea's going to give us a presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm Joseph Daniel Shea with Granite City Partners, an engineering and real estate advisory firm right here in the city of Quincy, pretty much right out that window. And I'm thrilled to be here tonight to give you an update on the Public Safety Headquarters Initiative. This project has been rolling since 2017, and since we work on it on a day-to-day basis, sometimes it's hard for us to remember that people may not understand it as intimately as we do. However, with a lot of the recent steel work, it's a great time for people to realize that this building is coming up and moving forward, and we feel it's a great time to give the council an update on the project. I would like to start with a thank you, because the Quincy City Council over the last 7 years has really made an array of approvals, from land acquisition approvals to licenses, to leases, to easements for utilities, to funding approvals. And each of those incremental steps have really been moving towards this transformative project in the corner of Quincy. Not only is it going to change and significantly improve the facilities that our men and women from the Quincy Police Department, the Quincy Fire Department, and the Emergency Response Department use on a daily basis, but it's really transforming this whole corner of the city of Quincy. From the fueling depot to new stormwater pumping stations to new roadways, this is more than just the building. The building itself certainly will be the flagship, there's no doubt about it. But this initiative, as put forth by this administration and approved over the course of the last several years by this council, is a great testament to how the city of Quincy can come together and make magnificent things happen. For a very quick walk down memory lane, the building is commonly called the Public Safety Complex, and the building itself sits right in the middle of 10-plus acres, with Broad Street on the back, C Street on the front, Southern Artery to one side, the DPW buildings to the other side, but the project also extends to include a newly built Field Street extension that can allow a change to traffic flow. And the project itself has impacts, for example, stormwater improvements as far back as Woodward Ave and Edgemere, because this is really not just a building, this is a transformation of this whole corner of Ward 1. The project itself will end with the hallmark building that you're going to hear about tonight, a 4-story, 120,000 square foot public safety headquarters. You can already tell it's going to sit prominently on C Street to carry the same grandeur that we have directly across the street with our historic Mount Wollaston Cemetery. Tonight, you're going to hear from R.J. Dowling, the lead engineer from Woodard & Curran, who's been with the project since its start. Holly Roach Robinson, the co-founder of Granite City Partners, who's part of the owner's project management team. And Steve Crucial, managing director with the Crucial Group, who directs most of our construction work. This team works daily alongside city staff, Suffolk Construction, dozens of designers and vendors and subcontractors to keep this project moving. After the technical presentation, we'll be back for some Q&A, and with that, I'd like to hand the microphone over to R.J. Dowling of Woodard & Curran.
Good evening, Mr. President, council members. I'm R.J. Dowling from Woodard & Curran. I'm here to present you the highlights of the project's construction completed to date for the enabling portion. A few bullets to show that new underground utilities have been constructed. We've replaced water lines, stormwater, and sewer. We've also constructed subsurface detention facilities and water quality bioretention ponds to support the project. In addition, new underground duct banks for power and telecom have been constructed, such that the overhead lines can be removed from Broad Street and the surrounding area and be placed underground to support the new municipal facility. Jumping a slide, we've constructed a new municipal fueling station to be able to remove the former facility, which is within the proposed building footprint. So the new fueling station is up and operational and can be accessed from Broad Street. In addition, Broad Street itself has undergone a transformation. Currently, we have new surface course bituminous pavement, sidewalks and curbing constructed, and we've created parking, an additional parking lot adjacent to the new Father Bill's facility, parking within the fueling station, and several parallel spots along Broad Street. At the end of the project, we will have created about 60 additional spaces to serve the area and the surrounding businesses. To help facilitate construction, we've removed several structures that are historic to the area, the old animal shelter at the end of Broad Street and the former Father Bill's facility, and they've moved into a shiny new space right across the street. I believe it started operation in December this past year. In addition, we've constructed a new Field Street Extension roadway that will connect Broad Street to Field Street, and this will provide additional traffic flow for the public safety headquarters users, make it much easier for direct response out to McGrath Highway and the lighting system there, and help ease some of the congestion that is at Southern Artery and currently. And finally, to help support the DPW traffic movements, we've constructed a new access driveway that connects their facility to Broad Street and also allows them to utilize the new Field Street extension. With that, I will hand the clicker to Hal.
Good evening, councilors. As we worked through the utility improvements on Broad Street that RJ just reviewed, we also were preparing the site for the building itself. We started with some grading and shifting of soils in order to make way for the foundation walls to be poured. With that, we also constructed some ground improvements to make sure that the soil was stable enough to hold the weight of the building itself. While the foundation walls were being poured, we were able to place the conduit for the utility services to the building. And once that was complete, we were able to pour the slab on grade. Soon after that, the masonry stair and elevator towers were constructed. Those are those cinder block sort of Lego pieces you may have seen popping out of the ground if you happen to drive by the site. And with the demolition of the old Father Bill site, we had the room to place the crane for the start of the structural steel components of the building. The pictures that you can see here show the pouring of the concrete foundation walls. On the left, you can see the masonry stair and elevator towers, and on the right, you can see the assembly of the steel structure. We're still assembling the steel structure today, so this is what we've completed so far for the building. And with that, I'll hand it over to Steve Crucial to talk about what we have to look forward to in the future.
Good evening, councilors.
Good evening.
So Polly stole my thunder. I was going to lead with, you've heard from my colleagues about all the great things we've already accomplished, and now we're going to turn to what's coming up. So as you can see in this picture, the structural steel continues to go up. This is probably about 2 weeks behind where we are right now. Superstructure is currently on schedule to be completed by the end of April. And the reason this is meaningful for us is once we get everything up, then we're going to be able to start closing everything in, which will get us to a point where we're weather tight, and then we'll be able to proceed uninhibited. At the same end of April timeframe, we'll be starting foundations for the garage, which sits behind the new police station. We are looking to have the roof tight by the middle of September, which will then allow us to get the permanent power put in place a couple of months later. This is meaningful because many of the trades, elevators in particular, won't even start their work until you have permanent power in the building. So this is a great milestone for us. Coming into the winter as we're weather tight, we keep going with the masonry facades. At this point, there's framing, there's mechanical installations in the building. We'll probably be at peak capacity as far as manpower at that point, and that'll push right into the summer. We are expected to be 100% weather tight, entire facade and the roof, by the end of March of 25, excuse me. And then we're going to just be working right through the summer, finishing out the inside, getting the systems installed, getting everything tested, turned over, and we expect to have the police occupying the building by October of 25. We're doing everything we can to compress that as much as we possibly can, within reason. But at the same time, there are a lot of unknowns, things that we don't control. You know, we had some challenges thus far with Father Bill's vacating their building, you know, and some of that was out of their control. So it's, you know, last time we spoke, we talked about some of the things that are affecting the construction market, right? COVID's gone and supply chain's better, but there are still some things that are just ridiculously long to get in your hands, like air conditioning units, like generators, like switchgear, you know, and these things are all critical to getting the building open. So, you know, we've got a bunch of smart people on our team, designers, contractors, managers, and we've done everything that we can do to make that process as seamless as it can be, get us what we need, and still be mindful of the dollars that we're committing to do so. Once we're in October, I'm sure they won't be moving out immediately. The next couple of steps will be get everybody comfortable in the new building, abate the old building for asbestos and other hazardous materials, demolish it, finish all the landscaping, and be out of your hair by that spring. That's the intent. We're currently on schedule to do it. We're currently tracking at budget, and we've had a single recordable incident since we started 3 years ago, and that was quite literally a paper cut. So it's a safe job. We're moving as quickly as we can. I think we're in a really good place.
Great.
Joe, you want to listen to any questions and answers?
So with that, we also are in the process of, we'll take through the screen, we have a time-lapse photography that we've been working through with the contractor to be able to watch. So we're trying to work on technology that will allow everybody to be able to watch us as we go, but it's really been quite an advancement. To follow up on a couple of the other aspects that Stephen spoke to, now that we've gotten vertical, we really control our own domain. Along the way, we made some decisions around the relocation of Father Bill's that cost us some time and saved us some money. Some of you may have heard, we received a surprise when we finally knocked down the RMV that became Father Bill's, and the concrete slab was nice tightly covering a big pile of asbestos. So these are examples of the types of things that we were dealing with while we were dealing with earthwork and unforeseen conditions. But now we somewhat control our own destiny. We are out of the ground. We're doing the steel, and that's one of the reasons why it feels to many people like an acceleration. A couple items I did want to touch on based upon our array of presentations to the council in the past. Suffolk Construction has been an excellent partner at driving construction. I do want to reiterate that 75% of the project has union participation by dollar value. So of the 53 trades, 32 of them are union. Of those 32, they are the larger trades. That's why dollar-wise, more money is flowing into union contractors. And I certainly would be remiss if I didn't thank the men and women of the police station, of the DPW, of TPAL and Inspectional Services, because we are remarkably disruptive down there at 55 C Street. Moving the parking monthly, moving cranes around, and we realize something this transformative is not easy, but the staff, the city staff at that location have really been very accommodating and continue to do their job while we do our job, and we know it's not easy. With that, Mr. President, we'd be happy to entertain any questions that the councilors may have.
Thanks, Joe. Counselor McCarthy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Mr. Shea.
Good evening, Councilor.
When you just touched a little bit on Suffolk and seems like things are cruising along relationship-wise, and I know we talked a little bit about any issues. Budget-wise, we feel good where we are right now with what's going on and where we're at?
We do. We certainly have to track our contingency very closely. That's contingency within the Suffolk contract and contingency within the project contract. But we have literally daily, weekly, and monthly meetings to make sure that we are tracking on budget. And now that we are out of the ground, unforeseen conditions should be at a minimum. There are more coordination of conditions within the building, but we are on budget.
That's great. And the Father Bill's comment about holding off a little bit, because that would have, I don't know if I ever heard any of our options for temporary locations, but we never had to go that route, and it saved us some money. I knew we ran into some things with the old registry building, the old Father Bill's, but that's a big plus.
It was. Some may remember the original concept was to build a temporary shelter across the street, because we knew Father Bill's had great plans for a housing resource center. This way they could be across the street, control their own destiny, whether they built out in 1 year or 5 years. They had their land, we had ours. However, with COVID money and a number of the entitlement money that flowed through to entities like Father Bill's, they were ready to go. So it made sense for us to delay our schedule, allow them to build their full Phase 1, Phase 2, 46,000 square feet, rather than spend the time and money on a temporary facility.
And the fuel station, were there any issues? I know that was the old, I think we were very smart in using that old Stop and Shop. The tanks, I don't think we moved anything, but we didn't have any issue. Looks like there's no issues with that at all. The old location seems to be sealed up, cleaned up properly well, and everything seems to be flowing pretty good.
Yes, we, according to the Massachusetts DEP, we had issues with the old station. There's no doubt about that, given the age of the DPW yard. But the new station, people will remember, it was a Stop and Shop station, was only about 10 years old at the time, let's say 12 years old now. We reused their new tanks and their new apparatus. We just repositioned things. It was a cost savings to the project, and it was quite clever. The old station, any of the historic leakage that had been remedied, has actually all been dug out anyways. All that soil is now gone, because the building that you see in steel in this picture sits right on top of it.
Right, and we haven't changed, we haven't spoke about this in a while, but the design, all the features that are inside the station to bring us up to state-of-the-art for our first responders, everything's pretty much the same layout we had before when we approved it. There wasn't any cutbacks or changes or anything.
There has
That
not
was
been, correct.
a big deal. Not a big deal, though.
Correct. Everything from the training spaces for our men and women of police, fire, and EMD, to the technology associated with the communications within the building. That is all modern, current standards, as opposed to what you have right now in your police station.
Right. Right, I'm sure Chief Kennedy will want to, October 2025 won't be here soon enough.
Believe it.
The other thing was the parking. I know there's not a lot of options. We're moving around all the time as the building gets bigger and the fences get pushed out, et cetera. But is that pretty much the layout that we're going to have until they get to a certain, well, to that point where they have to change the parking that'll be right now that the police use in the front, which is getting pretty tight. I think, I don't know if the fence moved out or whatever, but that's pretty tight. I didn't know whether we could do anything on the street side where the grass is to take some of that, to give them more width. It's pretty jammed in there when they're trying to maneuver. So I didn't know whether we could cheat a little bit towards C Street for now, if we were going to stay there for a while and make it a little wider.
So it is tight. I'm going to hand this over to Steve Crucial. It is tight, and there is a multi-phase parking layout because there is still steel to be added to the front of the building. So at some point, the crane you see on the back will be on C Street, and the cars will be on the back. Steve, do you want to talk about the parking deck?
Evening. So to that end, and you're right, we have had 100 discussions with the police department, ISD, DPW, everybody around that space because we're constrained. There's no two ways around it.
Right.
The movement that you're referring to, so we did move that fence, and we moved it another 8 feet, which is about half a space, so that we could fit the crane and not have to move it again for a while. So that's not going anywhere until we're ready to finish all that. So we're going to be looking at that for some time. But that was why we did what we did, and we continue to stay in contact. I talk to all these departments multiple times a week. Just
Right.
to make sure, do you have what you need? And they're certainly not shy about reaching out if they have a question or a concern.
I was just thinking if you were able to steal some of that grass that's towards the street, you could get the width, get a little more room, probably get the 8 feet back by C Street to make it a little wider. If you were going to stay there for a while, I didn't know whether things were going to change and you were going to go to a different setup as this goes along. I was looking at it, if the crane was going to be there and that narrow runway for the police is going to be there for a while, I thought maybe we could cheat a little bit towards C Street and then make it a little wider for a while, if it's going to be there for any length of time. But,
Counselor, we'll take another look at that tomorrow morning.
yeah, that's just a thought.
Okay.
And I'm good, Joe. I think it's great. Once the steel, it's kind of like the downtown. You know, when the downtown was bubbling and then all of a sudden it took off, people all of a sudden started to pay attention and now all of a sudden with the steel going up and the police station, you know, coming around the corner, I think that's it's a great job. And again, it's you know, it's going to be a great project when it's all done, and that whole corner with the cemetery and the new traffic lights and all that. It's a busy area. That's a busy Ward 1 corner.
It's a busy one. I do have just one other note on parking for the council and at-home viewers. Just I didn't elaborate on it, but behind the building is going to be a parking deck. So although we are very tightly constrained with parking right now, that is not the ultimate plan.
Right.
There's 332 spaces that will be in the parking deck or behind the building. So we will have more parking than the site has ever had once construction is completed. So I want to be clear that it is definitely difficult now, but in the end game, there will be parking and storage for 332 vehicles. 30 of those will be level 2 EV charging stations. And the garage itself is actually outfitted for adding up to 200 future EV vehicles. So the conduits will be in. But we'll start with 30 charging stations.
No, great, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy. President recognizes Councilor DeBona.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your presentation tonight. Just looking back on the road to get here, I guess I could say, the road is standing in front of us. You know, starting off with the VFW, Old Brian's Post, the bottle return, we had to acquisition that, and then we looked at the animal shelter, making sure they were relocated out. And then Father Bill's making sure that new building's built so they can transition over to there. And then you've ran into some issues with some asbestos, as we know. I'm glad you're very transparent. You're telling everybody about that. Just looking at the building in itself, looking at the old building every day as I drive by, seeing the bricks on the entrance just all deteriorated and basically falling apart. Just to kind of elaborate, you said that we were on time and we're on budget. Is that correct? Was what I've heard over the name. We had 53 contractors and 32 union contractors in that group, which is a little over half. Just to elaborate, some of the folks that are listening or dialing in or just watching at home, is how many stories do we have for the building, the public safety headquarters? How many stories is it?
So the building is 4 stories on C Street with a basement. So from the rear, it looks like 5 stories on Broad Street.
Okay.
4 stories on C Street. The building itself, we've raised up out of the floodplain. Some may know Broad Street was formerly in the floodplain. That has been risen up, so any flooding concerns at the end of Broad Street where the animal shelter once was. Now the roadways in the building will be up above that level. That also added really to the stature and prominence of the building. It will be a tall, beautiful building right on C Street.
And the full square footage of the building?
120,000 square feet.
20,000. Okay. Now, the transition of October 2025 is possibly the completion date. That's the on-time, timeline for right now. When that does happen, when the transition, I know this is way ahead of ourselves here, but when that transition, the folks from the police station will be going into the new building, correct?
Correct.
And then the fire administration folks will be in there too, as well as the emergency management.
Correct.
In the demolition of the existing police station right now, do you foresee any issues with that? And if there is any issues, is that gonna hold back anything that's going on in the existing building, the new building, with the police officers in there?
We do not anticipate any issues. The existing police station was reviewed repeatedly to see if there was any salvage value to that building, to see what the maintenance costs of that building was. If I recall right, it was something about $1.5 million just to try to keep that building going for another couple years. Really would have been putting good money after bad. So that building has been very thoroughly vetted. When that building comes down in the winter of '25 or the spring of '26, we expect it to be to great celebration for all of the individuals who had to endure that building.
So green space going in that particular area, does that look like the trees? We have some green space, we have some open space area?
Correct.
How many square footage do you think in that particular area out front?
That's a great
The
question.
C Street, little southern artery section?
I'm going to guess that's about 50,000 square feet, a little over an acre of space, and that will be as you wrap around from Southern Artery going up C Street. It's being designed, the facade of the retaining wall hasn't been put on, but it's being designed to match Mount Wollaston Cemetery. So it'll be a granite block wall with the pyramidal caps spaced, so as you come around that corner, it's right in harmony with Mount Wollaston Cemetery.
You talk about harmony, coming through that Mount Wollaston Cemetery, looks beautiful with those flags.
Really does.
They
It's
really
magnificent.
looks great. I saw them put in some cannons or something today, so there's always revisions in making Quincy better. We want to make Quincy better. We want to make it, we want to make the morale better for police officers and firefighters, and really the citizens of Quincy. You want to be able to come in a nice new building like we do here in this council chambers, looking at this beautiful building, as we do across the city. So looking forward to more improvements, looking forward to possibly having you guys here again in the future if there's any punchlines and problems or issues that arise, or if you guys can maybe get a little earlier than October 2025 would be great. So, but that would be great. The last question I have is, does weather have anything to do with it? We've had, knock on wood, we haven't had a lot of snow, we haven't had a ton of rain, but we have had some frost. There's been some nights where it's been cold, under 32. Does that play a factor in any of the construction at all?
I may hand this one to Steve, but I know when we pour our concrete, we try to keep it at a certain temperature, although the firms that we use have heating mats and blankets. We're all go, so maybe a nor'easter might slow us down, but at this point, we'll be innovative to make sure you get a quality product, but we don't lose time.
Okay.
Add anything to that, Stephen?
Counselor, I would just add that we were talking about Suffolk earlier. And as we're talking about, weather conditions, right? Because contractors never hesitate to say, hey, it was raining, it was snowing, it was too hot, it was too cold. Can you help me out? Because I didn't plan on it being like that. So now we get to go back to them and say, we've got an unseasonably warm winter. You must be going so much faster than you expected. When should I expect the credit? So that's where we are.
It's good.
Any other
Good stuff.
questions, Counselor?
Just basically, you also talked about one flip side on the weather side with being cold. How about the heat? You get over 100 degrees out there, say we have a heat wave in the summertime of July and August, 2 weeks straight of over 100. Does it make a difference with that at all?
Well, it certainly does in terms of labor productivity, but we've also, Suffolk is very stringent on making sure that there are enough shaded areas, there's enough water, there's enough, first aid materials around should anyone, begin to feel faint or otherwise, compromised by the heat. So, it's something they take quite seriously, and it's a very robust mechanism they have for enforcing it.
I appreciate all your questions and answers tonight. I thank you guys for coming in the group. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Bowman. Our president recognizes Councilor Minton.
Thank you. As some of you know, I spent 36 years in the old building as a police officer, retired in 2020. I also have a background in social work, and a lot of my research when I was getting my degree was in police stress. And unfortunately, the police world, you lead a lot of bad categories versus almost any other occupation, whether it be divorce, suicide, alcoholism. So, since the time I've been gone, since 2020, numerous officers have approached me, and they said, we need a good gym. We need a place we can work out in private and reduce the stress, don't take the stress home. And I said, I would bring that up to you. So here we are.
Well, thank you. I'm going to relay some of the details to the team. But this facility is being built with an appropriate athletic fitness facility and with appropriate rooms. I forget the exact name of them. The architect shared them, but rooms for basically after events where the police can go to make sure everything can be settled down, whether there needs to be discussions or interviews. With that, I'm going to look to the team to see if we know the names of those rooms or if anybody would like to answer that question.
Counselor, there are a number of different spaces that the design encompasses that will be able to be used for situations like you described, if someone just needs to calm down, let the temperature come down for a little bit. There are two on the upper level where prisoner drop-off is. So they believe they're strategically placed. There are also some other rooms which are a little bit more ancillary, which could be used in an emergency or in a urgent situation where someone just needs some peace and quiet to settle themselves. And as far as the gym, it may not be like Big Ten college, but it's definitely premium high school in terms of how it's being outfitted. So it's a terrific facility. They're going to be very happy with it.
Chief Kennedy, retired guys be able to come back and use it? All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. And Counselor, we will get the architect to highlight those spaces. We'll get a package out to you so you can answer with very high specificity.
That'd be great. Maybe Chief Kennedy could create a group that works out on a regular basis now in the awful gym to make recommendations how to make it the best possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Minton. President recognizes Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Shea, for coming in. Very informative. I do travel to C Street every day, so the entrances coming in, I notice seems like a temporary entrance there, and then the further ones that are the traditional entrance and exit. Is that going to change? Looks like is it just one?
It is. There will just be one primary entrance off of C Street that is exactly opposite of the reorganized Mount Wollaston Cemetery entrance.
Yep.
DPW will keep their secondary entrance that's further up the road towards Quincy Shore Drive. One major change with respect to access and egress to this site that I, as a civil engineer, I feel is a real game changer is the Field Street extension. Previously, our police had to basically pull out into the intersection, the bright yellow, sometimes blue paint. Wheel out into the intersection whether cars are blocking it or not, or go out C Street. Now the police will have the opportunity to go to C Street, go to Southern Artery, go Field Street to the intersection at Roxy's, or go Field Street all the way down to the original Dunkin' Donuts at Crackett Street.
Oh.
You can get them really out in multiple directions without having to grin and bear it through that Southern Artery corridor that's, we all know is tremendously congested.
That's great. One other question I had was, you talked about a transformative building, changing the whole structure of the city. How does that affect response time for different areas of the public safety, fire? I work right next door to the headquarters right now, and it's a very active building, so having it coming in and out, there's got to be some type of response study that's been done. I'm sure there has been. Just a question I had.
That's actually a great question, and there was I have to recollect properly, there was a response time study, which is how long does it take the police and fire to get to an emergency, whether it's a cell phone call or somebody pulls a pull box. That's what a response time study is. From a fire department standpoint, there is not going to be any apparatus here, so the fire trucks, emergency response vehicles will stay in the existing fire stations. Fire prevention and the leadership for the fire department will be at this facility. And like most response studies, they follow the initial apparatus, and they picked up a few minutes in some neighborhoods, lost a few minutes in other neighborhoods, but they're the second wave in. From the police standpoint, it's identical. I believe it's 13 area cruisers perpetually driving the city anyway, so they are the first response. Now people can the second response can come out of the new public safety complex through any of those new 4 egresses we talked about. That will absolutely pick up seconds, which can be critical.
Sure. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Nolan. President recognizes Councilor Liang.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening. I'm going to keep talking about the new traffic and the new patterns, if that's okay. So the new traffic light's going to be on C Street, correct?
There is the existing entryway on and off of C Street will be slightly enlarged and slightly rebuilt, such that police officers coming out of the public safety complex, let me go this way, and coming out of the parking deck have a straight shot right onto C Street.
Well, so I was just saying, because on the construction to complete slide, it says new traffic signal at C Street entrance. So there's going to be a new traffic signal there?
There's going to be a new traffic signal at C Street.
There
Yes,
will be.
Not a pedestrian crossing C Street from the cemetery to the public safety complex, but a vehicle traffic light.
Okay, and then there won't be one then coming from Broad Street to Southern Artery, right? There won't be any changes there at that intersection?
There will be a significant change at the Southern Artery intersection at Broad Street, in that Southern Artery is going to be blocked down the middle with an island and a fence, very similar to what we have on Granite Street next to the Stop and Shop headquarters. It is our goal to make sure that nobody walking down Broad Street just flows across the 6 lanes of asphalt to McDonald's, for example. We're going to push them to the 2 intersections, either at C Street or at Pearl Eye Vision or TD Bank and Roxy's.
Got
Have
it. Okay,
people
my only
cross.
concern is like, I think it already happens, right? I think we all know that happens pretty frequently, and so if there's going to be measures to prevent that from happening in the future, that's great. I appreciate that. I'm also thinking though just about access to Broad Street, for folks going to Father Bill's, right? I don't know, to be honest with you, what the increase or like the delta in foot traffic looks like now that the new facility is up. But I'm just thinking about folks who, well, the traffic, right? But I appreciate that there's going to be a traffic light at C Street to address the traffic issue over there and the traffic coming out of Broad Street. But now I'm also thinking about pedestrian and bicycle safety as well. And so are we doing anything with respect to either of those two things, either creating some bike lanes in that area for folks who don't have access to vehicles and they have to get down to that area if they're on a bicycle. Are we creating opportunities for them to get there safely? And on top of that, what are we doing to create better pedestrian safety as well?
Great questions. For pedestrian and bicycle access, there is going to be a pedestrian walkway from Broad Street to Field Street, such that, again, if somebody would like to egress from this network at a set of lights, in this case it'd be the Roxy set of lights, which is our preference, trying to make that as convenient for them to access that point as possible. With respect to bicycle lanes being painted, I would defer to the TPAL department, who's now working on the intersection redesigns at Coddington C and Southern Artery, and at Southern Artery, Field, McGrath Highway, and what most people don't know is this little tiny sneaky road called Morrison, to make sure that those meet current transportation standards.
You're looking back and forth. I'm
I am.
being told it's a separate project that's going to be addressed. So as long as it gets addressed, I mean, I don't
It
care
is a
who
separate
does it. It's
project,
just a matter
yeah, with a
of
separate
making sure it
design
gets
team.
done.
Yeah, Joe hit on the point toward the end there, Council, through you, Mr. President, I apologize. But we are under contract with the designer right now for that stretch, including the McGrath Highway, Southern Artery intersection, Broad Street, and Coddington and C Street. That's going to be a multi-million-dollar project, hopefully with some state investment, potentially some federal investment. But that work is getting underway right now.
That's great. Awesome. Thank you both. I appreciate it. And then the last question I had is just around the financing. You had said to Council McCarthy that we're on track right now for the budget as well as the contingency. And so I appreciate everything you've put into this update here tonight. And so I'd also just like to, if I could, get a financial update as well, as far as where we are with what we were anticipating for this project as far as finances go, and then where we are with the spending right now. And are we on track to stay within the original proposed budget? So do we have those numbers right now, or is that something that you'd have to get back to us on?
We would have to get back to you on that.
Okay, great. So again, just, and I'm sure I can find it as well. I just figured I'd ask since we're getting the update here tonight, the original budget, what the contingencies are, how far we are into that spending, if we're on track with that, and then, with the anticipation of completion in or full occupancy in 2025, if we're going to be on track with our budget then as well.
Happily, thank you.
That was it.
Thank you, Councilor
Thank you.
Liang. Any other councilors? Councilor Devine?
I'd like to say thank you very much to the parties that came out tonight to give us this update. I appreciate it. It's a beautiful-looking building, and we talked about state-of-the-art inside. I'm assuming, I don't like to use the word assuming because it's not a good word, but I believe that we've built this building to top-notch as to building now. Can you elaborate on any of that? Like how we built it? Like, is it built to, is it very energy efficient? How are we doing with that type of,
Great question. And I may lean on the team a little more, but it's, the building itself as a 24-hour fully occupied building is not a net zero or LEED certified building, but the design meets a great many elements that are within the energy efficiency world, whether it's triple glazed windows, the increased insulation. We are also covering the parking deck with solar panels.
Oh, good. I was going to ask you that next, because
What you
I
see
hate to see
behind the
solar
building.
panels on the roof. And you said the deck, I looked at it, I'm like, oh, they could do like REI. They do that at some of their parking lots.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah,
great.
so,
That's,
there will be a solar array upon the parking deck that I had previously talked about with the 332 spaces.
that's already in the plans, or it's going to
Already in the
be,
plans, yes.
Oh.
The deck has been designed to support the solar array.
so they'll be done by 2025 also? Oh,
Yes, so they'll
excellent.
be
I was going to
completed
ask
by
if we had future
2025.
for that. Maybe I should have read this along. Well, thank you very much, and once again, thank you for coming out and giving us all this information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Okay, I think that concludes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much,
All
Mr.
right.
President.
Madam Clerk, next item on the agenda, please.
Number 2, 2024-014, order approving implementation of FRP Quincy Development LLC land disposition agreement.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is the land disposition agreement that we had signed in 2019, June 18, 2019. And I believe Mr. Walker wants to make a few comments, especially to some of the new councilors, and I think he's spoken to a lot of us. This is an adjustment, a motion that will be made to adjust the square footage of the medical building project that is in the LDA. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Walker for a moment to summarize what we'll be modifying and voting on tonight.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the body, I appreciate the opportunity to provide just a quick outline on what's before you tonight with the hopes that we can move this tonight. The order before you tonight is technical in detail and presented in the body in order to affirm a decision recently made by the planning board that adjusts their permitting to 110,000 down to 100,000 from 150,000 square feet, which was included in the original LDA. It makes a single change to that land disposition agreement that the Council McCarthy mentioned that was approved by this body in 2019. The original square footage was based on an estimate at that time, but we were now locked into, and the private developer is locked into, a lease for 110,000 square feet of space with Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. So it was a very exciting opportunity. This change was the change that was reflected in certificate of consistency amendment approved by the planning board a little bit earlier last month. So essentially, this brings the two things in line. What the planning board has approved, the project itself, and the real estate agreement that this body approved in 2019. That's the specific matter before the body, and it's the only matter before the body in the order. But in offline discussions with a number of the councilors, I was asked to provide a little context to the bigger picture. So with the chairman's indulgence, we'll head into the Wayback Machine just for a couple minutes to sort of get everyone give a bird's eye view of what has transpired over the last 8 years or so. It's a context that we're going to be putting this in that the members of this body, particularly Councilor DeBona, Councilor Kane, Councilor Harris, were all here in the very beginning, and Councilor McCarthy and Councilor Liang just a short time after what was able to be accomplished over the course of the last several years. To this point today, we got here. We now have an ironclad lease with one of the world's most renowned medical providers. Between now and what happened then and the work that was done, it shows great forethought, innovation, and due diligence by this body together with the mayor. We've all seen the volatility in the healthcare market, most recently what's going on with Steward. And to a lot of members of this body and in this room, that's no surprise. We were sort of, this city was sort of the canary in the coal mine when it came to Steward. We faced those issues 8 years ago that a lot of other places are now facing today. And we didn't sit around, we didn't wait. This body, together with the mayor, together with the private developer, we took action into our own hands. We're on the cusp of everyone's goal at that time and going forward, and even today, was to provide first-class medical facilities in the downtown. And this body should be, as I mentioned, quite proud of that work that got us here. A long time ago, circa 2015, Quincy Medical, as I mentioned, closed its doors. That was after 25 years of excruciating, painful losses at the hospital. Steward's ownership was sort of the last nail in the coffin, but it wasn't the only nail. There were a lot of things going on at that time and through the years that led to the hospital not being a viable institution in the city. At that point, the hospital was put up for sale. A first round of offers was solicited, and within that first round, nothing even remotely close to what would have been acceptable to this community was presented. It was about that same time that the city and the mayor and this body made public, or we started having serious public discussions about what's called a reverter clause that was part of the hospital's property deed. That clause stated that the property, should the property at any point cease to become a medical facility, the property would then revert back to the city of Quincy ownership. This dated back to the city's original sale of the hospital in 1999. Now, we waived that referter pretty loudly, pretty clearly out in public at that time, even though in a court of law, it was never settled, it was never tested, so it sure wasn't a sure bet. This, to our benefit, likely narrowed the field of potential buyers, and this is where the mayor began having discussions with Rob Hale and his real estate subsidiary, Foxrock, about how we could come up with a viable solution here. And what they came up with was what's called a tolling agreement. So essentially, the city agreed to put a hold on what it believed were its rights to maintain and retain the property. And based upon that tolling agreement, Foxrock was given a couple options. The first was to produce a medical facility at the Whitwell Street site. The second, if that didn't work, was we give Foxrock the opportunity to build a large-scale major medical facility in the downtown, and then use the Whitwell Street property to develop as it sees fit. About the same time as we were negotiating and working through this process, this body, in its wisdom, saw fit to move the permitting of whatever happened at Whitwell Street over to the planning board, and that process moved forward. And once either of those conditions were met, either something medical was built on the hill, or we had a plan for downtown, Foxrock would pay the city $4.25 million to extinguish the reverter clause. Foxrock, in partnership with the city, they did present some options to the neighborhood and to the city relative to what it would take to build a large-scale or expand upon the medical facilities up on the hill on Whitwell Street. It was pretty evident right away that wasn't going to work, so everyone went to work right away on option B, which was bringing medical facilities to the downtown. Now, that part of the premise of this entire exercise, attracting new medical facilities, was under the understanding that medical facilities do not pay property taxes. So what we had before us was giving the rights to develop Whitwell privately, which would produce taxes, in exchange for producing non-taxable medical facilities in the downtown. Whitwell Street, which is now almost completely finished and well on its way to be fully occupied, will produce close to $2 million in property tax revenue for the city of Quincy when it's fully occupied. 2019, the council and the mayor finalized the land disposition agreement setting the table for that medical office building. Foxrock paid the $4.25 million to extinguish the reverter clause, essentially becoming the purchase price for that former area of the Ross lot where the medical facility would be located, which some of you may remember that site under the original master development agreement in the downtown, based upon the conditions, based upon the old garage that was there, based upon everything that was going to take to get it done, to get it to a place where it was buildable. We had valued that under the original agreement with Streetworks as zero. The agreement that was approved by this body also included a 40-year tax exemption for all square footage that included medical use. It was clearly understood, as I mentioned, that to attract a world-class medical tenant, it was going to require a tax exemption. For example, if BI or Mass General or Brigham and Women's came to town and they wanted to build a new facility on their own, not being the tenant, they would not pay any property taxes. The economics of any lease agreement that would be required in this, which would be required in this, because they would be dealing with the landlord, required that kind of tax exemption. That brings us to where we are today. The LDA originally called for 150,000 square feet. Again, that was based on estimates. We are now with a locked-in lease. The private developer has signed a lease with Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center for a firm 110,000 square feet, and that's going to be the size of the building that we build, which has now been approved by the planning board. So again, I just want to reiterate, based upon some of the questions we've received, and they're good questions because this is history, and people don't necessarily know, what has happened and where we've been. This has been a long road, but it's been a really productive one based upon where we are today. So that's what's before this body. We're not seeking an extension of any agreement. We're not seeking any new agreement. The only change that's before this body is the square footage change. Before I open it up to questions, I just want to introduce, we have the full downtown cavalry with us tonight, obviously doing double duty. We have the team from Grand City Partners, Holly and Joe Shea, RJ Dowling, Woodard and Kern has been a good partner in the downtown, Mr. Crucial, heavily involved in the downtown. We have special counsel to the mayor, Bill Geary, who's been with us for quite some time working on these issues. We have Brian Golden and Sean Navin, who are partners at Keegan Warland, a law firm in town, helping us on these. We have Deputy Planning Director Rob Stevens, Principal Planner Joe King, and of course, he's sitting in the well, so I don't see him. His Eminence, the Planning Director, Jim Fatsy's here as well. So, and I also appreciate the team from Fox Rock is with us in the back here as well today. So if anybody has any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Chair recognizes Councilor Harris.
Walker, Mr. Walker had me until he mentioned Mr. Fatsy's, but this is an exciting, like has been mentioned, this has been going on. City of Quincy has really gone too long without a medical facility that's going to be put in that place. And there's been an awful lot of work done on this, and there's so many benefits to it that, you know, anything from our folks not having to get in their cars and go into downtown Boston, which relieves everything from traffic through our neighborhoods to just a really, you know, I believe that this is a no-brainer. So I thank everybody who's been involved. I urge my councilors, especially the new councilors, they've worked really hard at this. We've dug through this, and if I can, I'm going to make a motion to approve, if I can, at this point.
Yeah. Motion made by Councilor Harris, second by Councilor Devine. On the motion, Councilor DeMona.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Walker, for a good explanation and information timeline of how this has transpired here today. So being on the council now in my 9th year since January of 2016, I've seen the phases of, you're talking about the reverter and all these different $4.25 million payment, and what's being done at Whitwell and all the way down here, and the different infrastructure improvements that we've had to do with the General's Bridge. And I think basically my main question that we have here is we've waited a long time, and I'm looking forward to getting a shovel in the ground over there in that particular section of the downtown. If this LDA is approved, or implementing this LDA tonight, when do you foresee a shovel in the ground with getting construction started?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I didn't mention this in my overview, Counselor, but I'll go back to something I discussed in the fall, in December, when we talked about the specialty grocer retail and that development on that side of the bridge. We have a major package that needs to be before this body. We hope and expect that that's going to be before you folks in March. That's going to fund the parking structures, that's going to lay out everything, how it wants to look, and any other infrastructure needs through, as we've done in the past, through our DIF program and potentially some other funding sources. So before we get to talking about shovels in the ground and those sorts of things, we're not going to count those chickens. We need to show this body that the money works and that the projects work from both a private side and a public side, and we very much looking forward to having a great deliberation and discussion on those major pieces that are coming up in really just a few weeks.
Is the major thing is the garage, the parking element of this whole thing? And I know we did the LDA a couple months ago in December, and we got that underway, and it looks like they're moving along with that. And I know we have to, is it the parking garage the key component to getting this built on this side?
Correct, sir.
Okay. Fully understand. you know, we've come a long way. I'm really looking forward to, I saw this on the agenda, and I said, okay, we're finally, 2024, let's get this going, because we've waited a long time. Medical facility in the city of Quincy is probably the most important thing that you can get to, besides education with our school system and our police and fire. I mean, we got to have a health care facility here in the downtown would be huge. So for me, time is of the essence, because I've waited a long time to see this come into fruition, and I'm glad we're at the table tonight. We have a different council. I look around the well and I see a different council. I'm looking forward to the three new folks. That they look like they're really eager to move this forward, I think, as well. And having some long-termers, myself with Councilor Liang, Councilor Harris, obviously Councilor Kane, as well as Mr. Dave McCarthy here, who's me and him have been together for a little while. We just want to get this moving. I think the administration, I think Mr. Walker does too, and I'm just looking forward to hopefully we can have more discussion in this March and have all our ducks in a row and move forward. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council. Before I go to Councilor Yang, and I know Mr. Walker had a great summary of everything that went on, but this is, again, just a modification
Yep.
of the square footage.
Fully
Not
understand.
a new LDA, anything, just a modification of the current LDA. Councilor Yang?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that's what I was going to start by reiterating as well, is that I understand that the vote taken here tonight is to just codify what the actual square footage of the project is going to be, and nothing else is going to change. But that being said, you know, I did want to, and I wasn't going to do this, but I wanted to take an opportunity to thank Mr. Walker for being so thorough in the history lesson, because when this was first put onto the agenda, I was ready to sort of, you know, go some torches, right? Carrying some torches in here to have a conversation with Mr. Walker about the tax exemption, because when it came to redeveloping this area of the downtown, like my colleague Councilor DeBona said many, many years ago when we were first looking at this area getting redeveloped, I was so excited for two reasons. One, getting some medical use back into the city, and two, creating some commercial development to, again, offset our residential tax burden, right? I mean, that long-term goal has always been, how can we increase our commercial footprint? And so to then know that the development itself is a little bit smaller than we had originally anticipated, obviously pre-pandemic, and there's a lot of things that have happened since then. And then on top of that, to know that, you know, medical facilities don't pay taxes. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, oh, right? Like, we still have a lot of work to do. We still have a long way to go. But I do appreciate that at the end of the day, we do need this medical use facility here in the city. I have a good friend whose mom recently took a really bad fall, ended up going to BID Milton, and now is back home here in Quincy, but has a long road of recovery ahead of her, right? And the fact that she right now has access to some facilities, but not all here in the city, is already a benefit. But to know that then long-term, you know, folks can get all of their services here in the city without having to leave, right? I mean, that's incredible. And so I'm really excited for this project. I just wanted to comment again and just say thank you, Mr. Walker, for the history lesson, because it is a benefit to our city. And I think we do still have a lot of work to do with needing to build out a bigger commercial footprint here in the city. So it's like a yes and, I think, tonight. And I just wanted to say thank you. And yeah, I would love to support getting this moving and getting a shovel in the ground.
Thank you, Councilor. Chair recognizes Councilor Ash.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Walker, again, I truly appreciate, as one of the newer councilors, the history lesson and kind of all the background documents that go into tonight's vote. I know the vote is limited. I also know the line item on the agenda, as Councilor Liang just mentioned, it seemed daunting at first. So I appreciate the background and all the history and the documents. I did also appreciate, you know, having it be stated today for the folks at home to know that if Beth Israel did come in and build their own facility, that facility would be tax exempt. Although that isn't up to this body tonight, I think that's important to reiterate. I do have a question. When reviewing the LDA signed in 2019, and I believe, Mr. Walker, you just said this, mentioned this, the construction in the LDA, paragraph E, was to be at least 150,000 square feet. As the amendments drafted tonight, it is for the building to not be less than 100,000, and I believe you just mentioned 110. Do you know, who would know? I think that it would be nice for the public to know where maybe that 40,000 square feet went, what the plan was in the beginning and what it looks like now. Again, not that not that it would sway my vote, but I think in transparency, maybe folks at home would like to know what the initial plans were and where they are now.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, these plans have taken several iterations, and a lot of the change has to do with market conditions, with estimation versus practical reality, and the changes in the world that we've seen over the last 5 years. The very first plan included a good amount of square footage. The exact number I don't recall at the time. It was never actually finalized, negotiated. The original building was planned at upwards of 200,000 square feet. At that time, there was a major medical provider at the table, not with the signed lease. That provider was in the process of agreeing to a certain amount of space, but the building was also potentially going to include other space as well. At that point, the private developer was considering building a building on spec, which would, at that time, was a little bit less risky than it would have been today. At this point in time, that potential risk of building a building on spec and then filling the building after it has been spec'd out and sized, it just wasn't viable. COVID happened, so that sort of threw the major medical provider and everything in that world that obviously, as the rest of the world saw, as we all saw, that threw everything up in the air. Shortly after that, there were iterations of sort of shifting to a life science building. Obviously, seeing what had happened in the Cambridges of the world, and out in that sector on the other end of the red line, it's been something we've been talking about for quite some time here. And again, it was going to be on spec, lab facility, X amount of square footage. Well, shortly after the COVID negativity hit, there was an issue with the market and life sciences, and we've seen that today. That space that has been built for life sciences isn't filling the way it used to. Life sciences labs outside of the inner belt are not happening anymore. And again, because of the economy, based at least some part on what was going on with COVID and the commercial office space and what happened in the whole world of commercial office space, that changed. Fast forward to where we are today, and I think the easiest way to answer it, Counselor, is that this is what the tenant wanted. The tenant wanted 110,000 square feet. We're going to deliver them 110,000 square feet. And that's how the economics work for them. It's how it works for the landlord. Certainly, in a perfect world, 5 years ago, a building that was bigger than this, yes, absolutely, we would have loved to have it. But all things being equal, if we wiped the past clean and said, if the mayor announced tomorrow together with the council that BI wants to do 110,000 square feet in the middle of downtown, outside of anything that had happened in the past, we would have jumped at it. And we're still jumping at it today, even though the world has changed a little bit.
Yep. Thank you.
All set? Thank you, Counselor. Chair recognizes Counselor Devine.
I just wanted to thank Mr. Walker for the information he turned in on, and I wanted to say that the people of Quincy and Quincy itself should be so proud, because it's amazing that we have this facility wanting to come to us. It just shows how much hard work's been done over the last 20 years to revitalize Quincy. So I can't tell you how, it's just amazing. So I want to say thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Anyone else? Okay, so again, we have an order in front of us, 2024-014. An order approve the implementation of FRP Quincy Development LLC land, which basically says that it'll be modified, the LDA will be modified to adjust to the size of a medical officer building to be not less than 100,000 square feet. Councilor Harris made a motion, seconded by Councilor Devine. Could I get a roll call?
Counselor Ash. Yes. Counselor Campbell. Yes. Counselor Devine. Yes. Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris. Yes. Counselor Liang. Yes. Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton.
Yes.
President Kane.
Thank you.
8 members.
Eight
The
members.
motion passes.
Thank you very much. One comment before I relinquish the chair back to Councilor Kane. On the news too, just to reiterate a little bit what Councilor Devine said. Stewart Healthcare, as we said, is not doing very great. And, you know, Norwood, St. Elizabeth's, I think there was a couple more on the North Shore that are in trouble. To be able to bring this, as Councilor Devine said, into the picture as a medical office project building that could grow is great for Quincy. It's another feather in our hat, especially in the downtown area where it's going to be a lot more easy accessibility for people coming off the T and in the center to go in and use it. So I think it's a great thing also. Thank you. With that, back to President Kane.
Thank you, Councilor McCarthy.
You're welcome.
That concludes our regularly scheduled agenda. Approval of previous.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Councilor Devine, seconded by Councilor Liang. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Ayes have it. Communications and reports from the mayor, other city officers, and city boards. Madam Clerk.
Yes, I have a traffic request this evening to be referred to Ordinance Committee for Advertising. Ward 3, Councilor Kane, add handicap parking at 24 Walnut Street. Utility request to be referred to Public Works Committee for Schedule and Advertising. Grant a location, National Grid Verizon, Independence Ave and Plymouth Street. Grant a location, National Grid Verizon, Franklin Street and Ritchie Road. Grant a location, MBTA Charging Station, National Grid, Independence Ave, Federal Ave, and Goddard Street.
Thank you. Unfinished business and preceding meeting, none. Reports of committees. Councilor Liang.
Yes. No, I think I have them here. All right, so we have in Ward 1, 2024-11, add no left turn on Morrison Street intersecting with Southern Artery. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Councilor Liang. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilor McCarthy. Do we take Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilor Ash.
Yes.
Councilor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Devine.
Yes.
Counselor DeBona. Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton.
Yes.
President Kane.
Yes.
7 members.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second one, 2024-12, in Ward 1, traffic add handicap parking at 1143 Hancock Street. I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve made by Councilor Liang, seconded by Councilor Campbell. Madam Clerk.
Counselor Ash.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Devine.
Yes.
Counselor DeBona. Counselor Harris. Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton.
Yes.
President Kane.
Yes.
8 members.
Thank you. And last one, 2024-13, also in Ward 1, add 15-minute parking on the odd number side of Hancock Street, 42 feet south of Dimmock Street to 104 feet south of Dimmock Street. I'd make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve made by Councilor Liang, seconded by Councilor McCarthy. Madam Clerk.
Counselor Ash.
Yes.
Counselor Campbell.
Yes.
Counselor Devine.
Yes.
Counselor DeBona.
Yes.
Counselor Harris.
Yes.
Counselor Liang.
Yes.
Counselor McCarthy.
Yes.
Counselor Minton.
Yes.
President Kane.
Yes.
9 members.
Thank you.
That's
Also?
it. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Liang. Okay, presentations of petitions, memorials, and remonstrance. Councilor Ash.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to pay formal respects to the family of John Collins. John Collins is an 85-year-old resident who many of you may have heard was struck by a vehicle outside of 1000 Southern Artery on January 3rd of 2024. Mr. Collins was very well liked in his community at 1000 Southern Artery, and he did a lot of volunteer work there at the front desk. I've heard and received great notes of how well-respected and friendly and great he was in the building. John Collins grew up in Charlestown. He was Charlestown High School class of 1956. He was a member of the United States Coast Guard, and he was honorably discharged in 1961 with the rank of seaman. He was a locksmith for the city of Boston, and then for Howard University for over 20 years. For Harvard University for over 20 years. His late wife her name was Jean Collins, and he is survived by 2 sons, John and Patrick Collins, their spouses, 10 grandkids, and 1 great-grandchild. So I wanted to pay my respects to Mr. Collins' family, and then also note the pedestrian issues in the area of 1000 Southern Artery and Des Moines Road continue to be issues that I look forward to tackling, and already have started to do that with our TPAL department. So I thought that was a good foray into getting that out there, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? Councilor Liang?
Thank you. I am hoping to just wish all of you, before we end the council meeting in a few more items, a very, very happy Lunar New Year. This Friday is Lunar New Year's Eve, and then Saturday is Lunar New Year Day. And traditionally, we celebrate the night of with a lot of food, a lot of family, and so even if you don't traditionally celebrate it, I just invite all of you on a Friday night to find some family and friends to get together and, wish in a very prosperous new year. If you're married, you can give red envelopes to loved ones who aren't married as a way to wish in the new year with prosperity and health as well. You could say Gong Hei Fa Choi Li Xiao Loi, which literally means Happy New Year, give me my money. So if you want to do that, you can do that as well. My favorite part of the new year, certainly. But in all seriousness, you all know that it's a big part of our culture, which is a big part of the city as well. And so Friday night going into Saturday, if you could just take some time to celebrate and honor, a very healthy and prosperous and good new year, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Give me my money.
Thank you. But I'm not married, so I don't have to give it to you.
Oh, all right. Details. Okay. Anybody else? Motions, orders, resolutions? Okay, so we've got our next meeting next Monday, and then at 6:30. So we'll see you then. Motion to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye.